All right, so I said a few weeks ago that I was going to start reading some of my short stories that I've written because people want audiobooks, but audiobooks are expensive. So the first book or short story I'm going to read is called The Raven. It was inspired when one day I walked off my front porch and up in a big hickory tree was a huge raven. This bird was massive. It's the biggest one I've ever seen in my life, and really into the Norse mythology and folklore, and of course it reminded me of Hugin and Munnin, which I have a tattoo for stand for thought and memory, two things that are very important to us as a human being. But anyways, that inspired this story called The Raven, and it the subject source is PTSD, and I feel like it's a very, very important subject in this day and age. There's so many people that suffer from, whether it's from their time in the service or just things they went through and trauma they went through in their life. It seems more and more of these events are popping up. So this story is inspired by that encounter with that wonderful bird. And here we go. With a frantic last-second beating of its wings to stop its formerly graceful flight, the raven landed lightly upon the stout branch of an ancient oak. His ebon head swiveled first left then right, tilted slightly, giving the impression his flinty eyes could see more than what was there. Not finding what he was searching for, the corvid stretched his mighty wings and hopped from foot to foot. He had been flying for hours, and there were leagues yet to cover before he could enjoy his much-needed rest. Beside him, a plump beetle fluttered daintily to the landing, shimmering wings folding deftly into a gleaming carapace that spiraled through a multitude of greenish hues as the rising sun reflected off of it. The raven gave it a sideways glance and paid it no heed. On a normal day, he would have enjoyed such a tasty morsel to fuel his journey, but today was a different kind of day, a special day. Today he had a task to perform in this particular place and time, so he waited. And he watched, something he and his sibling were well known for. Seconds turned into minutes, minutes into an hour, and still the raven sat upon his lofty perch and observed the quiet clearing below him. He watched as a doe with her twin fawns huddled cautiously by her side, warily left the shelter of the woods to drink from the tiny burbling creek that drifted lazily through the meadow. He watched in amusement as a monstrous black bear lumbered through the tall grass to flop into a sitting position before a blackberry bush, and with the light touch of a hummingbird's wings, plucked the tiny berries into its great maw. Guardedly, the raven kept one glittering eye on the bobcat, with fur the color of river rock, as the cat stalked the boundary between woods and meadow for its prey, until it slipped between the trunks of two maples across from the relieved bird. But none of these sights were what the ancient bird kept watch for. So he continued his watch, patiently waiting for what his master had charged him with. Time passed, and the raven kept one beady eye on the clearing and closed the other, stealing a moment's rest as only those that have stood sentry can. A rustle directly across from the raven caused him to rise to full alert. Silky crest turned quizzically as he watched a huddled figure shamble from the daytime shadows of the woods. The man made his way across the meadow, his feet following a seemingly mindless path, his shoulders slumped as if burdened with a great weight, and his head hung low in defeat. With a sigh of resignation fleeing his lips, the man sat roughly on a boulder at the water's edge, his haunted eyes staring unseeing at the tinkling waters of the little creek. There was no doubt in the raven's mind that this was the reason the master had sent him to this place. Sharp eyes watched with keen interest as the man reached into his worn olive drab jacket and pulled a small block-shaped item from the depths of one of its oversized pockets. He cradled the dark object in his lap like a newborn child, thumb absently tracing a thoughtless pattern across its dull, metallic surface. The raven's unease at the gun's appearance grew as the man began talking quietly to the soulless thing. "I'm so sorry, May. I just can't do this anymore, babe. You and the girls deserve better than what I can give." Though the man acted as if he were speaking to the gun, the raven could sense the broken words were meant for someone else, someone dear to the man, but he lacked the strength to face. Slowly, he raised the weapon to his head, steeling his resolve as he prepared to free himself of the painful existence life had brought him. The gun trembled as the broken man pressed it against his temple. His twisted eyes painfully shut and breathed in and out one last time before ending his waking nightmare. The unnatural silence that preluded such tragedies as this was abruptly shattered by a tremendous squawk. The man barely had time to identify the source of the intrusion before the raven fluttered to a landing atop his shoulder. With a quick, deft movement unique to those of the avian species, the raven pecked the man's hand hard enough to pierce the skin and draw blood. The man yelped in pain and dropped the gun, clutching his wounded hand with the other. "What the hell, Bird?" The man's voice was strained with the overload of emotions assaulting him. He cradled his bleeding hand and suddenly found himself mesmerized by the rapid flow of the scarlet ichor. As the blood pumped hot and fast from the jagged wound, the broken man felt dark memories leaching from the shadowed corners of his mind. Ragged flashes of light randomly broke the death-encrusted darkness of a foreign battlefield, and were accompanied by the dying cries of friends and foes alike. Waves of machine gun fire battered the hellish landscape, leaving behind the acrid sulfuric aroma of spent gunpowder that mingled mercilessly with the smell of empty bowels and the wordless screams of battlefield demons that left the man paralyzed, panting for breath, and eyes wide at unforgotten horrors. Just as his pounding heart threatened to tear itself from his heaving chest, the wound began to close, and the flow of his lifeblood slowed, cooling against his feverish skin. The darkness that had terrorized his mind was slowly being burned away by a nimbus of warm, comforting light. The fiendish memories of war were forced to scuttle away into the forgotten corners of his mind, replaced with the memory of sweet promises of a doe-eyed beauty and a chance encounter. With each beat of the man's heart, a memory of light, of love, faded gently in and out of his mind's eye. The wonderful day he married that doe-eyed beauty, May, and their love-filled honeymoon that followed. Once that faded away into warm bliss, the memory of the birth of his twin girls, Nina and Sarah, filled the void. That had been a proud, good day for the then recently returned soldier. More and more memories gleefully danced through his head, taking the man by the hand and leading him from the darkness that had consumed his daily existence. Christmases, birthdays, family vacations, snowball fights with his daughters, and nights spent quietly talking with May about their hopes and dreams. They filled him with hope. They buoyed him. Quickly, as the pain had come that had pushed him to the breaking point, it fled from the freeing radiance of the love he felt for his family and they for him. Shaking himself as if shedding unpleasant, soggy clothes, the man spied the gun laying like a viper in wait at his feet. Without hesitation, the foreman soldier snapped up the cold chunk of metal, and with the deft, precise movements that comes with years of repetition, he disassembled the weapon. With a growl that was equal parts defiance and liberation, the man flung the now useless gun into the creek. Unabashed tears of joy streaked the man's face as he fled the clearing, calling out to the sky and anyone who would listen. "I'm coming home, May. I'm coming home to you and the girls." High upon a stout ash, the raven watched, with the smug satisfaction as one of his species can. With a pair of heavy beats of his wide onyx wings, the raven launched himself into the sky. There were still places to see, memories to recall, and a report to be made. Well, this first one is my first story here that I've done, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to work on better ways to produce them and everything. This is the very first video I've ever made doing something like this, so I'm just going to work on it, hopefully get better with it, and the more interest that's shown in it. So I hope everyone has a great day and have fun.